Boldwood presents Finding Love at the Magical Curiosity Shop, written by Jaimie Admans and read by Emma Noakes. Chapter 1. There are two types of people in the world. People who appreciate the value of stuff and minimalists. I'm the former. An unfortunate number of my customers are the latter.
Oh my God, this place is amazing!
I hadn't heard a customer come in, and I shriek in surprise at the unexpected voice behind me. I was on my hands and knees, trying to grapple a butterfly-shaped side table into a space in the window display, after a customer had ransacked it, and I push myself onto my feet and pop out from behind a canvas painting of a fox, dressed up like a Tudor king. My movement dislodges a bucket containing stems of dried flowers, and they go crashing down. The giant sunflower hits the floor with such force that the flower head explodes, sending seeds skittering noisily across the shop. The customer is a young girl, probably teenage-ish, and her hands are clasped over her mouth to cover a gasp as she spins on the spot, looking around in awe as her eyes flit from the rainbow mosaic horse's head on the wall to the drapes of vintage fabrics hanging from the ceiling, to the vast array of unusual ornaments and oddities that cover every available surface. Now that is the reaction I want my customers to have. Maybe business would be better if more of them did. The girl's eyes flick from me to the scattered sunflower seeds still pinging across the floor.
Sorry, I didn't mean to make you jump.
It's okay. I should know my way around without bumping into things by now. I wave towards the rest of the shop, slightly perturbed by a young girl coming in alone. Most of my customers are antique collectors and curiosity hunters, and the only youngsters I usually see are bored ones, being dragged along by parents and complaining all the way. Feel free to look around while I clear this up. She glances at the door behind her, almost like she's waiting for someone to come after her. I grab the dustpan and brush from behind the counter and start sweeping, trying to keep a furtive eye on my visitor, because there's something off about this. I'm sure of it.
I'll help.
She crouches down and starts gathering the dried sunflower seeds with her hands, and I can't help noticing that she's sort of backing behind a display table, and she keeps glancing at the window, almost like she's trying to hide. Are you waiting for someone?
No?
She says it quickly, and when I continue looking at her expectantly, she huffs with a typical teenage eye roll.
Just my dad. He's so boring. He'd hate a place like this. He said I could come in on my own. He doesn't mind.
There's something in her tone that makes me wonder if that's the whole truth. But before I can work out what to do about it, the door suddenly flies open with such force that it nearly tears off its hinges, and a man rushes in.
Have you seen a—
He's in such a flap that he doesn't see my hanging birdcage candle holders, and crashes smack bang into one, and I cringe as the sound of metal connecting with his very handsome face reverberates through the shop. He lets out a yelp, and a hand flies up to his forehead at the point of impact. His eyes scan the shop and fall on my young visitor.
Ava, thank God. Don't you ever do that again. You can't just disappear like that. I didn't know where you were.
I knew she wasn't telling the whole truth there, and underneath the hand, he's still holding to his injured forehead, her dad looked so flustered and panicked that he must have been racing around Ever After Street, frantically searching for her.
We were watching the carousel and I turned around and you were gone.
I didn't want to go on the carousel. It's for babies.
You can't sneak off like that. I thought something had happened to you. And you? He turns to me. Why are you harbouring a young girl on her own? You must have known she'd run off. Me? How would I know something like that? I feel myself bristling instantly. She told me you said she could come in by herself. Oh, she did she? He goes to raise an eyebrow and then winces when it obviously hurts the head injury. I don't want to hang out with you. Ava gets to her feet and folds her arms. You're boring, and this place is so cool. This place is a hellhole. Who leaves hanging things right in the doorway? Oi, that's my shop you're talking about, and it's not in the doorway. It's to the side of the doorway. You weren't looking where you were going. I panicked, okay? He twists around to glance back at the doorway and the birdcage candle holders beside it. I thought my daughter had been kidnapped. I didn't know if I was ever going to find her again. Anything could have happened. He puts a hand on his chest, forcing himself to take deep, calming breaths as he looks around. And now I see she's been swallowed up by the local junk shop, so I was right to be concerned. It's a curiosity shop. It's not junk, they're curiosities, see? I resist the urge to poke my tongue out at him. He's not the first customer who doesn't understand the concept of a curiosity shop. He undoubtedly won't be the last. Dad, shut up. It's a treasure trove. The clue is in the name. Treasure wouldn't be treasure if you didn't have to hunt for it. I point to the sign behind the counter, where, admittedly a little bit obscured by all the other things hanging on the wall, the Mermaid's Treasure Trove shop sign is displayed, and I trill a line I've said to many customers who complain about well, they call it clutter. I call it beloved items just waiting for their new owner to find them and give them the home they deserve. Just ignore him. He was raised by wolves, Ava says to me and then shoots an angry glance at her father. Unpolite ones. It's impolite, he corrects her, still grimacing underneath the hand held across his forehead. Wolves that are sticklers for grammar, apparently. I try to ease the tension I can sense between them. I should probably keep my mouth shut, but anyone who calls my shop a hellhole deserves everything he gets. And actually, both are correct. The word started off as unpolite, but that spelling has become obsolete over time, and impolite has become the more accepted usage. But that doesn't make it wrong. She gives me a look that suggests she's about to burst with joy. And he gives me a look that suggests he'd quite like to roast me into a pile of ashes on the spot, with his strikingly blue eyes. You are the coolest person ever, and this is the coolest shop ever. Look at your hair. I love your hair. She comes over and picks up a lock of my long red hair. Oh my God, Dad, look at this. Someone put colour in their hair and no one died. She tucks the lock back into place and turns back to me. No one died, right? When you went to the salon and had colour put in your hair? Nothing bad happened? Right now, my cheeks are arguably redder than my Ariel red hair. I've never been considered cool before, and I'm really not used to strangers touching my hair without permission. I, don't go to a salon. I do it at home, over my bathtub. And nothing catastrophic happens afterwards? No natural disasters? The world doesn't end? No police? No serial killers? No. I feel awkward because I've clearly got myself into the middle of an ongoing father-daughter argument. Well, this random stranger is in her 40s when you're... I'm 38, I snap indignantly. The man sighs before reluctantly correcting himself. Well, this random stranger is in her late 30s. When you are 38, Ava, you can do what you want with your hair. Until then, nope. She rolls her eyes and huffs. At least not everyone has got a stick up their bum like you, Dad. You're way too young to be talking like that. He shakes his head in despair. Where do you even learn these things?
I stifle a giggle as she stomps off into the other half of the shop without answering. It used to be a storage room, but when my father ran the place, he got the doorway widened so we could expand the shop space, and the staff area upstairs became a storage area instead. Back then, it was just me and him, and the house is within walking distance, so we didn't need a staff area. And now it's just me. I'd rather use the space we have for my beloved objects.
Sorry about that. And the age thing. I didn't mean to insult you.
The father's eyes flick in the direction his daughter went.
Blame my tired eyes rather than your wrinkles. Not that you have wrinkles. Or not that I've noticed, if you do.
He makes a noise of frustration and scrubs a hand over his face, pulling my eyes to the way his fingers catch on the dark stubble covering his jaw.
I'm going to stop talking now. Sorry.
When he takes his hand away from his forehead, I grimace at the sight of a bleeding cut, and what will be an angry bruise tomorrow. Stay there, I'll get you something to clean that up. I race up the stairs, grab a cloth from the kitchen and soak it under the hot tap, and then run back down to find him hovering in the same place near the door. He takes the cloth from me and holds it to his head. Is it bad? I step away to give him some space and accidentally back into a life-sized resin model of a flamingo and steady it as it wobbles precariously.
What, the gaping cut or the thumping headache?
He takes the cloth away and checks it for blood.
I'll live, probably. Today has been stressful enough without the added head injury, though, so thanks for that.
It's totally sarcastic, and after how insulting he's been so far, no one would blame me for ignoring his earlier apology. But I'm intrigued by how utterly weary he sounds, and he's still got a slightly panicked look about him, like he hasn't quite recovered from Ava's disappearance yet. He keeps looking in the direction she went, like he's worried there might be a back entrance she can sneak out of and vanish again. Long day? He looks at his watch.
Well, we left the house 3 hours ago, and I feel like this afternoon has lasted for 3 months. I thought this would be the perfect father-daughter outing to kick off the summer holidays, but apparently...
He raises his voice to ensure his daughter overhears.
Ever After Street is for babies and is seriously uncool.
His voice lowers again and he looks at me.
So I've been told 24,601 times so far today, anyway. This is the first shop she hasn't wanted to leave immediately in case she gets spotted by someone she knows and is so embarrassed to be seen dead in somewhere so babyish. Maybe I'll get something right one day. But I won't hold my breath.
Teenager? I ask.
13. What gave it away? The sulking, the insults, or the tantrums in a public place?
I heard that, Ava calls from the other side of the shop. I often worry about the lack of customers, but with these two in here, it's probably a good thing there isn't anyone else to get in the middle of the tension between them.
And you weren't interested in hearing that. My apologies again.
He's got the whole Prince Eric look going on. Bright blue eyes and the darkest black hair, a straight nose with a wide tip, not unlike one of Flynn Rider's wanted posters. He's the kind of gorgeous that makes your mouth go dry and makes you stand up straighter, self-consciously smooth your hair down and suck your stomach in without even knowing why. He's highly unlikely to be single, and even if he was, I have no intention of trying to seduce him. My last relationship ensured I'd never be tempted to try to seduce anyone ever again, or let myself be seduced, in the unlikely event of anyone trying.
Even so, I can't help myself sneaking a quick peek at his ring finger. No wedding ring. Promising. No, not promising, Mickey. What are you thinking? He's obviously struggling with summer holiday parenting, and schools only broke up on Friday. Men with issues are even more off limits than men without issues, and all men are no-goes for me for the rest of forever. I watch him as his eyes wander around the shop, his lips pressed into a thin line that's becoming thinner with every object he takes in, like he's trying to figure out what to criticise first. Eventually he goes back to the hanging birdcage that nearly took him out just now. Why do you have a birdcage with no birds? It's decorative. You put candles in them. And a curiosity shop is hardly the place to keep birds in captivity, is it? They're Victorian, from the times when families used to capture wild songbirds and keep them in the house to sing to them. Victorian bird cages would have been made of brass or wood. This is aluminium, if I'm not mistaken. Cheap aluminium that will bend if you press it too hard. He reaches up and does exactly that. Aluminium was discovered in 1825, and the difficulty in obtaining it made it rarer than gold in Victorian times. Believe me, they weren't building bird cages out of it. They're not Victorian, they're cut-price tat, and probably made in China. They're a throwback to Victorian decor. I didn't mean they were actually Victorian. It's not an antique shop. There's a curious mix of everything in here. From the looks of it, there's not a mix of everything. There's simply every single thing that anyone's ever thrown out. His hand shoots out, and he rummages in a basket and pulls out a scrap of fabric and holds it up. Why do you have a basket of fabric pieces? They're old fabric pieces. Scraps of fabric can be important to crafters, or vintage collectors, or people who remember things like curtains or bedding from their childhood and want to reminisce. Even as I say it, I wonder why I'm defending myself. What I stock in my shop has nothing to do with this judgmental stranger, and I don't have to justify it to him or anyone else, despite how guilty I feel about the bloodied red mark blooming on his forehead. He grunts and puts it down again. One hand is still dabbing at his forehead with the damp cloth, and he shoves the other one into a pocket of his smart trousers, with a pin-sharp centre crease. Hopefully the spiky tone in my voice was enough to tip him off that his opinions are unwanted here. A few minutes pass in awkward silence, interspersed only by gasps of joy and various iterations of, "Oh my God, I love it," and "coolest thing ever." And I keep expecting him to follow his daughter through and have a look around, but he seems glued to the spot right inside the entrance. You can come in, you know. You don't have to loiter in the doorway. I have a great fear of what else might fall on top of me. I've found a safe spot here. I'll stick to it, thanks. You're blocking the door for other customers. He glances at the door behind him, with a look that suggests other customers are about as likely as seeing Bigfoot toddle up the road carrying a handbag and twirling an umbrella. Well, if you're suddenly overwhelmed with a rush, I'll get out of the way, or provide search and rescue support when they get lost inside, or first aid when something leaps forth and attacks them. You can barely move in here. That's not true. You can move. You can't move much, mind, but I'm not giving him the satisfaction of admitting that. All right, it's a tad overcrowded, but it's a charming hodgepodge of treasures. It's not supposed to be organised with military precision. It's intended to be a jumble where customers can unearth objects they'll love and cherish for the rest of their lives. But his words make me squirm uncomfortably. I worry my shop has reached the stage where it's too crowded, and hearing it said so blatantly does nothing but confirm my fears. You can't honestly believe all this has value. Given the quite odd, disembodied half-mermaid statue outside, I thought it was going to be mermaid-themed. There's no theme at all. It's like you open the shop door and let every forgotten storage unit in Britain throw up in it. I want to laugh at his turn of phrase, but I stifle a snort behind my angry look. Who does he think he is? I want to tell him that this is a perfectly successful little business, full of treasures that I rescue from where they're unwanted and keep them safe until a new owner can find them and give them love again. But given the lack of customers lately, perfectly successful might be pushing it a bit. Besides, I don't have to justify that to anyone, let alone some random man who thinks he knows best. Does it ever cross your mind that not everybody wants your opinion? I've been running this business for the past couple of years and for decades before that with my father. What gives you the right to come in here and be so judgmental and derogatory? He goes to answer, but ends up mouthing at the air when no sound comes out. He blinks at me open-mouthed for a minute, and then goes to push a hand through his hair and accidentally clonks the hanging birdcage again, sending a metal clang ringing through the shop, and shakes his head. And I get the impression that it's more at himself than at me. You're right, he says quietly. It's been a rough day and I'm taking my frustration out on you, and I'm lashing out at your shop. I'm sorry. At least your daughter has better taste than you, and better manners when it comes to giving strangers their unfavourable opinions, I mutter, secretly quite glad to see the look of shame that accompanies his apology. He's an odd one, opinionated but also quite apologetic. That's not the first time he's said sorry in the past few minutes, and his face has reddened at being called out on his rudeness. He's the kind of man I should dislike, but he's also quick to apologise, and there's something about him, a sadness or tiredness, that makes it seem like there's no real heat behind his words. Plus, it's really hard to dislike someone who looks like the real-life version of my first ever childhood crush, Prince Eric, from The Little Mermaid. And it's not a weird, disembodied half-mermaid statue. It was a full mermaid once. My dad bought it for me when I was a little girl. It stood outside for decades, but it was looking a bit sorry for itself after years of wear and tear, so my dad cut it off at the waist, repainted it, and turned the tail upside down, so it looks like the mermaid is diving into the street. I struggle to keep the emotion out of my voice, because it was one of the last things he did before he died. He wanted to give my beloved statue a new lease of life when he knew he wouldn't be around for much longer. No one insults my mermaid's tail. Sorry. I didn't know it was so important. I've obviously failed at hiding the emotion it brings up, because he looks genuinely guilty, and I wish I hadn't bothered trying to explain. Why does it matter to me if he likes my shop or not? He takes a tentative step further in and touches a hand to the side of his head, indicating the starfish clip in my hair. You're really committed to the role, with the hair and the t-shirt. He runs a hand across his chest, meaning the slogan across my top. It's not a uniform as such, but I collect t-shirts with mermaids on them, and I've amassed quite a collection of pun slogan tops, and today's one is blue with waves and a mermaid's tail diving into them, and the words, "Nice to see you." I love mermaids. I wanted this place to feel just like Ariel's underwater cave of wonders, but on dry land. If he was going to say something disapproving in response, he doesn't get a chance because a shout comes from the other side of the shop.
Oh my God, I love it. I have to have it.
There are footsteps as Ava comes barreling back into the main shop, with an ornament tucked under her arm. It's a skeleton in an elegant sitting position, with a huge pair of colourful butterfly wings on its back. I've been calling it a dead fairy, and I knew someone would love it one day.
This is the best thing I've ever seen, she squeals. It's going to look incredible in my Instagram photos. All my friends are going to love it.
Ava, not everything is about social media. When she turns and glares at her father, he trails off and pinches the bridge of his nose, and I feel a bit sorry for him. Despite his harshness, he seems out of his depth, and that look crosses his face again, the one that suggests he's secretly wishing for someone to rescue him.
I want to buy literally everything.
She puts the butterfly-winged skeleton on the counter, and I hurry back over to serve her.
This place is so cool.
Thank you. I blush as I say it. It's been a while since my shop was complimented like that. It used to be cool, but it doesn't feel cool these days. Not even to me. It feels cluttered, and if I'm honest, maybe a bit stifling. I used to love spending the days in here when my dad ran it. But now...
You have the best taste, and I love your starfish clip, and oh my God, you're even wearing Ursula's necklace.
Personal space is not an issue for her as she reaches over the counter and lifts the large gold-painted shell that's hanging on a cord around my neck, an exact replica of the necklace the sea witch uses to capture Ariel's voice.
That's so awesome.
Thanks. My best friend, Lissa, runs the Colours of the Wind Museum, and she had it made for me as a birthday present. If you're staying on Ever After Street for long, you should go there. It's the coolest place. Ava nods excitedly. Maybe next time, her father mutters, sounding like there might be an icy blizzard in hell before there's a next time. The tension between them is palpable, and I try to ease it. Right, one dead fairy coming up. I have a box somewhere. Ava laughs at my description, and I can feel her eyes on me as I crouch down to root around behind the counter. Most things I sell don't come boxed, but I keep a selection of boxes that are likely to fit certain items, and bubble wrap for fragile things, and it's all in a heap under the counter shelves, and I can never find anything when I want it.
Is that a mermaid on your arm?
Ava has spotted my tattoo, and I stand back up and lift my sleeve, revealing the outline of a mermaid sitting on a rock. We can only see her back and her long hair as she looks out into the distance, and most of her is hidden under the sleeve of my t-shirt, but her tail wraps around my elbow.
That's so cool.
Her fingers reach out and brush over the scales of the mermaid's tail.
I want a tattoo, but Dad won't let me.
I laugh out loud and then glance at her dad. I don't think me and your dad would agree on many things, but he might have a point with that one. Maybe one day, eh?
Why doesn't it have any colour when you're so colourful?
I blush again because I haven't felt colourful for a while now, but my cheeks go so red that they're definitely qualifying. I couldn't decide what colour I wanted. I was going to go for green tail and red hair, but she wasn't meant to be Ariel. So then I thought of a blue tail and black hair, but I was going to go back when I decided, but I never did. What colour would you choose?
All the colours. A rainbow mermaid. Something bright like you.
My cheeks burn as I blush even harder than I ever knew it was possible to blush. Do you want to colour it in for me? She's 13. She's not a tattoo artist.
Her father sounds exasperated. I know, but I meant, look, I found these a few weeks ago. I crouch down again and root around underneath the counter, wondering where the heck I put the pack of pens in question, and how things manage to go walkabouts in this shop as soon as I take my eyes off them. Here they are. Ah! I stand up to thrust them in the air victoriously and let out a scream of surprise. The father has finally stepped into the shop, and now he's leaning so far over the counter to see the disorganisation behind it that I nearly collided with him. He jumps backwards and holds his elegantly fine jaw like I've punched him in the face with the pens, even though I'm certain I would have felt it if I'd made contact with that stubble. And my shop has surely caused him enough injury for one day. I put them down on the counter with a satisfied nod, and he peers at them. You shouldn't put ink on your skin. I have enough problems without strangers in shops teaching my daughter that it's okay to draw on her skin with Sharpies. They're not Sharpies. They're tattoo pens. They're completely safe for your skin. You use them to test out designs and placement for tattoos before getting anything final done. They wipe straight off. His raised eyebrow has disbelieving written all over it, so I add, look, I'll prove it. I draw a star on the back of my left hand, shake it for a few seconds to let it dry, then clumsily tip water out of my bottle and wipe it away with a tissue. It fades slightly, but leaves a definite star-shaped stain. I hide my hand behind my back. Well, it'll come off with a bit of soap. Can I, Dad? Ava is already selecting her colour choices from the pen pack. Only if, He looks bewildered as he holds a hand out towards me, asking me to fill in my name. Oh, Mickey. I'm Mickey. Only if Mickey doesn't mind, he finishes. It would be an honour to see someone else's vision for my plain tattoo. I rest my elbow on the counter and stretch my arm out so she can reach the entirety of the mermaid. Her hand clamps around my arm to hold it in place. Mickey, like the mouse. I laugh because it's not the first time I've heard something similar. Mickey as in short for Michaela, but no one's called me that since the headmaster in primary school, one helped the class hamster make a bid for freedom. She giggles. I'm Ava. The dad doesn't offer to introduce himself, so while she colours my arm like a colouring book, I look at him expectantly until he relents with a reluctant grunt. Ren. Ren? I raise an eyebrow. Is Stimpy nearby? For the first time since they came in, his mouth turns from a thin line into a smile, and it's a thing of beauty. You must be a 90s kid with exquisite taste in childhood cartoons. They don't make TV like they did when we were growing up, I say, because I assume he's roughly a year or two older than me. Is Ren short for something? No. His half suggests that it is, but he's not about to enlighten me. Dad's name is Brennan, Ava says without looking up from her work. Dad's name is only Brennan when he's in very severe trouble with your grandmother, he clarifies. She looks up at me. He's in very severe trouble with Grandma all the time. I glance up at him and meet his eyes. That I can believe. It's almost like he wants to smile again, but he looks away instead, taking another moment to cast his nitpicky eyes around my shop. Okay, I get that there are weird things in here, but why on earth is there a jar of forks on the counter? He takes a step closer so he can pull one out and hold it up to the light. And why are they all bent and twisted?
I go to answer, but Ava gets in before me.
Dad, they're not forks. They're dingle hoppers.
I grin. Exactly. You know how Ariel thinks a fork is called a dingle hopper, and it's for brushing her hair, and then she goes to dinner with Prince Eric and sits there combing her hair with one. I get a lot of old mismatched cutlery collections that are useless for selling, so why not make the most of them with a quirky touch? A bit of heat from a hot air gun, and I can curl the tines to make them a little bit different. Some people think it's weird. Some people get it. I nod to him, and then to Ava in turn, the former and the latter. They're free. You can take one if you want. He looks at the jar like he'd rather stick a bent fork up his own nostrils, but Ava stops colouring to carefully select one. Her brown hair is in a side plait, and she uses the dingle hopper to brush through the ends, and then hands it to her dad to hold it for her.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, we'll be sure to treasure it forever, Ren mutters. I have no doubt that, if it was up to him, he'd be looking for the nearest bin as soon as they get out of the door. Eventually, Ava steps back from the masterpiece on my arm, where the mermaid tattoo has now got her tail scales neatly coloured in every shade of the rainbow, and purple streaks amongst her black tendrils of hair. And it's such a bright explosion of colour that I'll be sad to wash it off in the shower tonight.
Best fun ever.
Can I take a photo? Only if you take one for me too. I get my phone out and hand it to her, as she makes an effort to get the perfect angle. I tidy the pens back into the packet, and Ava moves the skeleton to the middle of the counter again, and I go back to hunting for a box under the counter, and when I stand back up again, one clutched in victory, she's opened a purse and started counting money out onto the counter. There's a £5 note, a £2 coin, and I can see the panic on her face as she desperately roots through her purse, counting out small change. She looks towards her dad, like she's about to ask him for the extra money. And I decide to save her the trouble. You know what? I'll take a £5 for it. She gasps.
Will you really?
Sure. It was priced at £10, but I'd rather things go to someone who really loves them, no matter what they can afford. I don't own anything in this shop. I'm just keeping it safe until it can find love again with a new owner, and this dead fairy has definitely found her new owner.
Oh my God, thank you so much. You're the best.
She looks so delighted that she might be about to vault over the counter and hug me, and I can't help smiling at how happy it's made her. This is how I want customers to feel when they find a treasure they can't live without. Ren's look of disdain suggests he thinks otherwise. I meet Ava's eyes and roll mine in solidarity as I fit it into the box and poke polystyrene packing in around it. Maybe your mum will like it. His lack of wedding ring has piqued my interest, and when I see an opportunity to work it into the conversation, I can't stop myself pushing for more info. I don't have a mum, and regret it immediately. Ava, that's categorically untrue just because your mother's not here right now. Mum left, she interrupts him to explain to me, and then turns back to him. Why do we have to pretend she didn't? I used to have a mum, now I don't. Now she's swanning around in Italy with a new boyfriend and she's forgotten we exist. Because all you do is read and drink tea. I cringe internally at the oversharing, but he cringes visibly. He turns to me with his hands held up. Sorry, Ava hasn't learned that we don't share personal matters with people in shops yet. It's not personal, it's fact. What am I supposed to say when someone mentions her like that? Oh yeah, I'm sure she'll love it. Except she hasn't bothered answering a text message in over a year and couldn't care less if we were alive or dead.
If I pretend everything's fine, you'll have a go at me for lying.
Ava. He pinches the bridge of his nose again, looking like he's trying and failing to stave off a headache. Mickey doesn't care. She doesn't know us. We don't know her. This isn't a conversation to have with a stranger. I care. I bite my lip, feeling stuck between the metaphorical rock and hard place. He's right, of course. Whatever's going on in their family is nothing to do with me, but Ava clearly needs someone to talk to, and I recognise her need for anyone, to know what she's going through. I like hearing stories. Every object in my shop has one, and so does every person. Everyone deserves to have their story heard. And I'm sorry, I say to Ava. It was presumptuous of me to mention your mum. I know all too well what it's like growing up with people assuming you have one, and how awkward it is to have to explain that your family isn't like other families, and to feel different and out of place. You don't have a mum. My mum died when I was 5. I grew up with my dad, who was trying his best too. I'm sure there are many, I glance at Ren and give him a half smile to let him know I'm joking. Well, half joking. Many things to insult your father about. But is drinking tea really one of them? Would he be a better person if he drank lemonade instead? At least it might fizz him up a bit. We both giggle, and Ren is trying not to laugh too. Oi! I think tea drinking is a gene that every Brit has, but it lies dormant until you hit your 20s, and then you suddenly realise there's nothing better than a cuppa. His blue eyes flick up to me under thick black eyelashes. And the reading is for work. I'm a history teacher, and I take my students' books home with me for marking. A history teacher? Colour me surprised, although it explains the knowledge of aluminium and Victorian times. You're way too... hot? Gorgeous? I've got myself into hot water with this unfinishable sentence. Young. A spark of imagination strikes at last, but I'm certain they both know what I was really thinking. You're way too young to be a history teacher. When I was in school, my history teacher was so decrepit, the entire class joked that he taught history because he'd been alive since the 1700s. He used to drone on and on about various battles. Sometimes he'd go quiet and someone would have to poke him to double-check he hadn't died mid-lesson. Ava giggles, and Ren gives me a grateful nod, like he realises I'm trying to ease the atmosphere. I'm sure your customers don't usually overshare this much. Oh, you'd be surprised. I know everything there is to know about Mrs. Morello's bunion trouble, her wait for a hip replacement, and her cat's urinary incontinence problems. There's oversharing, and there's oversharing. Ava giggles again, and Ren tries to suppress a smile. I can see the tension in his shoulders physically ease under his blue jacket, and it gives me a warm glow inside to have given them a moment of light relief. It didn't seem like they were having the best afternoon. This is exactly why I like trying to engage with strangers who come in. Everyone has a story. Everyone is going through something, and most people are all too happy to talk about it. And I love hearing stories.
What's the story behind the skeleton fairy?
Ava's hand rubs over the box as I wait for the ancient till to finish printing the receipt. I think she was waiting for a boy she loved. It's the way her hand is reaching out towards someone. Maybe he was a fairy prince promised to someone else, but he swore that he was going to be true to himself and come to her. But ultimately, he was too much of a coward, and she died waiting because she never gave up on love.
Ah.
Ava's looking around like she wants to know the stories behind more objects.
How about those plates?
She points to a display of a dinner set. The key pieces shown off in a glass-fronted cabinet, the rest boxed up underneath.
They're a beautiful pearlized white plate with delicate red roses and green stems around the edges. I got them from an auction. I like to think they belong to a young married couple. Maybe they got them as a wedding present. I can picture them sitting down to their first meal together as husband and wife. Or maybe this was the good china that they only got out on special occasions. Maybe this was saved for the meals when both sets of in-laws came over. Maybe one disapproved of the other, but the only thing they could agree on was how pretty the china was. Ava looks enthralled, but Ren looks confused.
But what make are they? Are they a sought-after brand? How old are they? Are they in good condition? Are they valuable?
I don't know, I'm not running an antique shop here. I think they meant something to someone, and they will do again one day. They're just waiting for their new owner to find them.
And meanwhile, gathering dust and taking up a huge amount of space you could use to display something that might actually sell, or clear some of this clutter.
Dad, you can't call it clutter. It's a collection, like Ariel's.
Ariel had a cave full of junk, and so does Mickey. The only difference is that Mickey thinks other people want to see hers, whereas Ariel had the decency to keep hers private. Disposophobia is what it's called. Fear of getting rid of things.
Ouch. I recoil like an insect has stung me. I square my shoulders and try to look unbothered, even though he's hit a nerve. Well, it's a good thing it has absolutely nothing to do with you then, isn't it? Why are you so interested in how I run my shop anyway?
I'm not,
He seems stumped for a moment, like he's just realising how his opinions are coming across, and then he waves around the cloth he was still holding to his forehead.
If there was less clutter, there'd be fewer head injuries. My interest is solely from a health and safety perspective.
Ava gives him a death stare, and then turns back to me.
Just ignore him. He doesn't mean it.
It's okay. He was raised by wolves, right? I tried to cover it with a carefree grin, but that comment hurt. It shouldn't. His opinion shouldn't be relevant to me. But the lack of customers lately has made me wonder if he isn't the only one who thinks this. He's the only one both brave enough and rude enough to say it out loud. He's also unwittingly confirmed one of my underlying fears, that there's too much clutter in here, and one day a customer could get hurt. Some people will always be too uninspired to believe in the magic of things. They will never understand how wonderful it is to find an item that feels like it was meant to be yours, or look at something and be transported into another world. I think he can hear the wobble in my voice, because that look of guilt crosses his face again, and he goes to say something but stops himself before any words come out.
We're all puzzle pieces. Parts of us are scattered across the world, and every so often someone will find one of their missing pieces, and it's a joy to witness. That's what my dad wanted when he started this shop, and that's what I want with my collection.
I'm fighting to keep my voice calm, but they can definitely hear the internal struggle. One man's disparaging opinion is no different to every other person's disparaging opinion. Usually I can shrug those off, but there's something about Ren, a sharpness combined with a softness, that makes me wish he was one of the ones who got it.
Well, this is the best shop I've ever been in.
Thank you. I try to cling onto Ava's words, while he shoves a hand through his product-filled hair awkwardly, knocking one foot against the other, like he still wants to say something.
We should go.
I don't want to go,
Ava replies.
I think Mickey's about to evict us,
he says with the guilty look again. You? Maybe. I frown at him. Ava can stay as long as she likes. She gives him a so-there look. He edges towards the door, keeping a watchful eye as if other items of my stock are about to leap out and attack him. Well, as the adult in charge of today's activities, we've got about 10 minutes of paid parking left before we get a fine, so now, please. Ava huffs like a typical teenager, complete with an "it's not fair" eye roll, and picks up the box with her skeleton ornament in it.
Thanks for everything. We're totally coming back soon.
He holds the door open to ensure she goes through it, without being distracted by anything else, and once she's safely outside and taking a photo of the mermaid's tail statue, he turns back to me. And thanks for looking after her when she'd run off. At least when they're toddlers, you can put them in reins. But people frown on that when they're teenagers. And you're just expected to be able to keep track of them. A glaringly impossible task. I appreciate the difference between what he said at first and now he's calmed down. No problem. And I'm sorry about the... I point to my own forehead and grimace. We'll move the bird cages. I didn't mean for that to happen. It's okay. Not much harm done. I'm sorry about the teenage drama and the oversharing and the... He waves a hand in the general direction of my stock, probably meaning being so forthright with his unfavourable opinions. Maybe we'll see you again. If you're not crushed to death by an avalanche of dinner plates, that is. Ha ha! I call, even though he's already closed the door, just to let him know how utterly hilarious his quips are. It's highly unlikely that an avalanche of plates would actually kill me. A serious maiming, perhaps, but death is unlikely. Despite it only being 3 p.m, when they leave, they're the last customers of the day. I wanted a string of visitors to metaphorically prove Ren wrong, but it isn't to be. I tidy the displays outside, hoping to encourage people in, but no one comes, despite there being plenty of activity on Ever After Street. We're a little shopping street in the foothills of the castle in the Wye Valley. Every shop is themed after a different fairy tale, like me with The Little Mermaid. The Neverland sweet shop next door, or Marnie a few doors up the street, who runs the Tale as Old as Time bookshop. As it's the school holidays, there are a lot of parents and children running around. The old music of the carousel turning fills my ears, and I stand and watch children shouting joyfully with their arms flung out, as their wooden horses glide up and down, filling the clearing at the bottom of the steps up to Lissa's museum, full of fairy tale artefacts and wishing wells and magical fountains, and I wonder again what I'm doing wrong. Every shop on the street seems to be busy, except mine. After another couple of hours of staring at the door, willing it to open and hordes of treasure-hunting customers to pour in, I give up and flip the shell-shaped sign over to closed. I leave the starfish hair clip and Ursula's shell necklace on the counter, because they're part of my costume for work, not really me. And I walk home with Ren's words ringing in my ears. I tell myself it's because it sticks in my mind when you meet someone so rude. But I can't help dwelling on it. Dwelling on how anyone can have so much nerve, I try to tell myself. But the dwelling isn't on that. Not really. I purchase more stock than I sell, and the money my dad left to keep the business going is dwindling, fast. Customers are few and far between, even when the rest of the street is busy, a fact I've been trying to ignore. But Ren has hit a nerve. My shop does nothing to encourage people to come in. In fact, there's a good chance that so much clutter actively encourages them to stay out. And I keep replaying the sound of my Victorian-style hanging bird cages clattering into his face today.
Every time I'm in the shop, I'm constantly bumping into things and knocking things over. I've wondered if a customer could get hurt one day. And now that day has come. And it feels like I have to do something about it. I just don't know what. There's so much stuff that it's debilitating, and I haven't got a clue how to make the shop like it was when my dad ran it again. At home, the house is surprisingly empty. There are a few ornaments that I've fallen in love with over the years, some of my dad's most loved things. There's a tiny framed photograph of my mum, partially obscured by the double exposure of an old film camera, and now it's been joined by a photo of my dad, smiling before he got ill. And I talk to them like they're really in the room. I spend most of my time at work because in the shop, I can pretend to be someone else. The items in my shop let me escape and live in someone else's shoes for a while. I can imagine where every item has been, who it belonged to, and how that person came to own it. The romance of the people in their lives and the stories behind who gave it to them, and what it signified. So much of our lives and our loves centre around objects. My fingers rub over the necklace that I wear all the time. Under my slogan top and Ursula shell necklace, a small 9-carat gold mermaid's tail on a delicate chain. The one thing of my mum's that remains. That's all that I have to remember her by, apart from a few clothes in her wardrobe upstairs, things that Dad recognised, but I was too young to remember. That's why I run the shop the way I do. Because we know what it's like to be parted from sentimental items, and if I can help someone else to find things that might matter to them, then that's what I want to do. But Ren has got to me. I keep thinking about him. I hope I never have to see him again, and also kind of hope he might come back one day. He might have been harsh, opinionated and unfair, but there was obviously a lot going on beneath the surface, so much tension between them, and they both seemed so unhappy. My instinct has always been to dig into people's stories, and I can't help thinking about his soft eyes and acerbic grin, and Ava's hopeful optimism. Like most kids in that transitional age, wanting to both grow up and also cling onto the belief in Disney castles, princes, and fairy tale endings. And even though I know fairy tale endings don't happen in real life, I want there to be people in the world who still believe they do. And I've always wanted my shop to be part of that. Chapter 2. The following morning, I wedged the door open with a seashell-shaped doorstop to encourage customers inside. It's a lovely July day, sunny, but with a breeze that prevents us moving into hot and sticky territory, as I tidy up the tables that I display things on outside for customers to rummage through, in the hopes that it might pique people's curiosity enough for them to step through the door. There are tables displaying baskets of smaller goods, and half barrels and wooden crates holding other things, and some artificial plants to spruce things up, pink trees and planters full of plastic lavender. I swipe a hand across my forehead and lean on the blue mermaid's tail statue for a minute. My shop has an old-fashioned Dickensian feel to it. There are window boxes under the 2 upstairs windows with yellow petunias tumbling down that I really must remember to water. I can't help wondering what my dad would make of the shop now. He was more into antiques than I am. He used to laugh at me making up stories about every item in his shop, and sometimes he'd know their real stories and counter my fairy tale fantasies with boring old reality. That's why I'm doing the Philip Teasdale Antiques Fair at the Ever After Street Castle at the end of August,
My dad loved nothing more than antiques fairs, and he put forward the idea of holding one in the grounds of the castle on the hill, at the end of the street. He didn't live long enough to see it come to fruition, but Whit, the owner of the castle, has been kind enough to name it after him and give me a prime spot for my stall. I just need to choose my most spectacular pieces to display there, and it could be the difference between days as bustling as they used to be and days as quiet as recent ones. There will be write-ups in trade publications, and the whole thing is being filmed and broadcast on local news channels. It's a huge deal, and my dad would have embraced the opportunity with open arms. But I've let my doubts creep in. What do I know about antiques? I deal in things people might like, whereas my dad was more into bargain purchases that sold for high-value prices and gave the business much-needed financial boosts. Yesterday, my financial boosts amounted to a £30 footstool that a woman bought in the morning and the winged skeleton I sold to Ava.